Kia ora, it's 5 o'clock and this is Otago Access Radio. Welcome to round 5 of Rattling the Chains, where we are boxing our way through all of the 14 contenders vying to be the 58th Mayor of Dunedin. I'm your host Ian Telfer, and tonight, under the hot lights and in the studio with me are 3 more fine specimens of humanity. I have a one-term city councillor who's been an employment consultant and a wide-ranging community advocate, Rachel Elder. Welcome, Rachel.
Kia ora.
And to Rachel's left, a rare bookseller, a freedom of speech advocate who is on the is down as a climate change skeptic and even more so a Trump supporter, Malcolm Moncrief Spittle. Welcome, Malcolm.
Kia ora, Ian. Rachel's right. Yeah.
To Rachel's right.
Stage left.
There you go. And on the other side,
yes,
however you define it, a volunteer with a Master's in Political Studies, deeply involved in climate change politics with Generation Zero, Finn Campbell. Welcome, Finn.
Hello.
Well, welcome to you all. And can we start with a bit of election news? Lee Vandervis got another headline this week by telling Otago University students that he wouldn't encourage more students to vote because he wanted more educated voters. Is that, you were there, is that what he said, and what do you think? Finn?
I was trying to not completely piss my pants laughing, but I'm pretty sure that's exactly what he said.
Did he have a point?
Well, I mean, I think there are a lot of people who don't know anything about local body elections. It'd be unfair to just point at students as that local body elections is a mystery for everyone.
Yeah, it is a bit of a mystery, but we're learning about it as fast as we can, sure. Yeah, did he misspeak?
No.
Right.
No accident there.
Yeah, interesting. How did that debate go? I saw the critic article from the university and they were pretty critical, weren't they? Rachel, you got a bit of a bad rap.
Yes, I did. I got a very bad rap, actually, and I think I had a bit of foot and mouth disease at the time as well. So
you think you were just off that day?
I just had one of those days, I think. So, for example, with housing affordability and warm houses, I got quoted as saying people should learn how to warm their houses, but I also talked about having a flat myself and making sure it was very well insulated and it had heating and it had floor-to-ceiling curtains. And I think all landlords should be responsible. And I actually liked Finn's idea of the university and students sticking up by rating landlords. So I didn't handle that well and probably was misquoted a wee bit in the sense that one side was only pointed out. So, but
chalk it up as a learning experience.
And then I used Rosie the Riveter as my symbol. But why do I do that? Because I always stick
this
up
is your
with
Yes We Can lady. All right. Wearing her polka dotted bandana.
Exactly. And
I have seen it round, yeah.
Yes, she's wonderful. And what she's about and what I'm about and always has been about is empowerment. So when I've worked in the community, I've worked with mothers, I've worked with women across the sector, and at the moment I'm supporting my sister-in-law who's Māori, and she's standing for mayor and council in Whakatane. But I didn't sort of get that across, and I was quite sad about that because I've always tried to empower women and support women.
What critics said, which was a bit of a needled thing, but maybe is there truth in this? They said you have a feminist icon, but you don't have enough feminist policies. Do you think that's true?
No, I haven't articulated my feminist policies well. I've tended to talk about the other things I stand up for, and in those places I do work really well with women. I've done I took a course over a number of years about women pursuing their dreams and how to do that. I've helped women out of abusive relationships. At the moment, I'm working with a whole lot of women in South Dunedin, and we're all sort of like Rosie the Riveter, trying to empower other people in South Dunedin. So I think I haven't articulated my empowerment for women policies, but definitely if there's disadvantage, often women are more disadvantaged, and I'm always looking out for people women in that sense. But yes, I think fair due, I need to actually do a post on that.
Good challenge.
It is a good challenge, and some of the questions we get are really good for us because it helps us articulate what we're about. And for me, empowerment of women is a big issue. Also, empowerment of workers, empowerment of people who are poor. It's just who I am.
Malcolm, have you ever stood for something before, or is this all new territory?
It's the first time I've stood for any political position.
Yeah. How are you finding it so far?
It's interesting. I'm just taking one day at a time and one interview at a time.
Probably very sensible. Look, I'm dying to ask you about Trump. I mean, I don't want to be kind of red rag about it, but that's an unpopular position to take in Dunedin, isn't it? You know, being a fan.
In Dunedin, it is. Yeah, I think our media in New Zealand is particularly full of what I call Trump derangement syndrome, along with a lot of academia. Like you go along to open lectures at university, they can be on any topic at all, but it seems obligatory for someone to have a dig at Trump in them.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah. Tell me, what do you like about him? Because, you know, I live in a bubble, right, where people they're not big fans. But I'm interested. I mean, I admire you for that. So, you know, tell me what you see.
Well, I see that he was clearly the anti-war candidate when you listen to in 2016 when they were choosing their nominees for each party. Like at that time, there was a risk that we'd be at maybe US be at war with Russia, with Hillary having a plan to introduce no-fly zones, and we might not have even had the Syrian war if, say, Trump had been president 8 years earlier. There was the sort of destabilisation of Libya when NATO bombed Gaddafi's convoy, and then the US sort of establishment plan for a long time was to overthrow Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So I think if Trump hadn't got in, they might still be trying to do that. But then domestically too, you see he's got record low unemployment figures and stock market reaching new highs, and but I fully understand people get all their news about Trump from the ODT or Channel 1 or Channel 2. They probably go along with this idea that he's some kind of Christian and racist, sexist, Islamophobic, which I don't agree with.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. You don't think he is? Because he does go out of his way to be provocative, but more than that, he goes out of his way to offend people at times, doesn't he? In the campaigning, he was pretty nasty about almost anyone.
Well, I find him funny more than nasty. I mean, I found it entertaining. Like there's the debate with him and Hillary, and where he made the joke about her being in prison. I mean, I think that's funny. But
it's not so funny when he picked on a disabled reporter and mocked her in national television.
I don't think he did pick on that disabled reporter. There's a YouTube clip you can watch where he makes that same gesture, talking about half a dozen other people who weren't disabled. So it was more like a mannerism Trump had.
Okay. Do you see the madness people worry about, or do you just see a man who's got a plan?
I see him accomplishing a lot. I've read some of his books he's written, like The Art of the Deal, and I've read books by his advisors, and he puts women in positions of importance in his organisations. Kellyanne Conway was the first woman to run a successful campaign to elect a president, but you never hear that from people.
That's interesting. Well, has it got relevance to the campaign, or is it just a side thing?
Very little, really. Like I haven't made it part of my campaign at all, apart from my sort of Facebook page, which I've called Keep Dunedin Great, so that might make people think of Trump. But
you're channeling him just slightly.
Yeah, and that Make America Great, that was also used
Make Dunedin Great
Reagan.
Again.
Yeah. Well, it's really great, so that's why you have to have the keep instead of make. Yeah.
No, that's fun. All right, interesting. Rachel, what's your priorities for this one? Like, what are you focused on?
Well, I think one of the things I'd like to see is that we actually, as a group, when we first get in, take a couple of days away and do some looking at who we are, getting to know each other. I would like to see that happen, and also talking about what values we want as a team and what kind of feel we want as a team, because I think the culture that you have on council actually helps you be able to think better. Like, you can talk about things when people trust and respect. If you've got shared vision, it really helps that. So one of the first things I would do is actually that.
Which is what, a team building exercise?
Yeah, a team building exercise, and talking about what kind of culture and how we might carry that through. So say every second month go out for dinner or something like that.
Is there room for a Trump supporter?
There's room for everybody. I think council is about people being voted on by a diverse group of people. We're not all purists, and we've all got good ideas, and that's why people are voted on council, for the ideas that person represents. So I think everyone's got good ideas, and I think supporting each other with those and helping people, people being free to articulate those are really important. May Chen did a study on boards and councils, and what she found was diversity was really, really important on boards, major. And the diversity of thought was the biggest issue. And so diversity of thought means you've got everyone in the room and they've got a different angle on something, and you come out with something better. So for me, that's really important. Yeah. I do have a big dream, and that is to connect some of our 400 tracks and trails. So we've got 2 to 3 day trails around Dunedin's hills, and getting people out walking and having adventures, so people can stay here for a holiday. Now,
there was something else I saw in the Critical, was that in the paper saying they said, what's your biggest problem for students? And you said hills.
Yes.
Were you being facetious?
No, I was saying actually to get outdoors is really good for your mental health. Oh. So, and
it wasn't as crazy as it sounded.
It wasn't as crazy as it sounds, but I do agree, actually, they do need more events and things happening in the university area. So that was another foot and mouth moment.
Well, these things happen.
Yes.
All right. Hey, good one. Let's do a little quiz. Let's do a little Who Are You quiz and find out a bit more about you, if it's all right. I've got 3 minutes on my timer, and I'll start it now. I need your full name, Finn.
Findlay Hamilton Campbell, but I prefer Finn Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel Ann Alder.
Malcolm Bruce Moncrief Spittle.
Good. The river or stream that you most identify with?
Waitaki.
Waikato.
Leith Stream.
Your favourite food?
Oh my God.
That's a hard one, isn't it?
I'm like, pass. There's no winner.
Pasta?
There's no winner.
No pasta.
Right. At the moment.
You like all food?
Yeah.
Food is good. Tamarillos at the moment.
I just can't abide them, but okay, good.
Falafel.
Yeah, good,
yeah, fair.
Good choice. Now, what colour politically do you identify closest with? Red, green, blue, black, anything else?
I've been non-partisan / light green.
Light green.
I'm across the spectrum, depending on where things are.
You're a rainbow.
I'm a rainbow.
Malcolm?
None of those. I don't identify as a colour politically. I've voted Green several times in the past, but I wouldn't call myself Green now because they've gone off the rails.
There's a long answer for a short. Okay, good. What do you do when you get bored?
Play video games, ride my bike.
I like to go for walks.
I don't get bored, too busy.
Don't get bored. The last book that you read, Finn?
Oh, God.
Yeah. No, I think
it would say it's Orientalism. I don't want to admit it.
You get some sort of credibility for that. All right. Rachel.
That is difficult, actually. I haven't been reading lately because of elections.
Yes, true. Too busy to read.
Yes, too busy to read. The Secret Life of Bees I read, and that was, I can't remember the lady's name, but it was about...
I know the one, yeah. Malcolm.
I'm reading a book called Astounding about 3 of the early science fiction sort of golden age figures. John W. Campbell was editor of Astounding magazine, and Robert Heinlein and Isaac Asimov.
Nice one.
Biography.
Interesting. That sounds good. All right, something that fascinates you at the moment?
Having a future, actually.
That would be good.
I think the broad spectrum of issues that we are having to think about at the moment is huge. So the whole lot fascinates me. I suppose thinking about South Dunedin.
Oh, South Dunedin.
South Dunedin is a big issue for me.
Malcolm?
There's a level of mass hysteria about climate change, with people becoming like Greta Thunberg being idolised.
All right, that's fascinating. We'll talk about that more in a sec, I think. All right, last one then. What do you want to be when you grow up?
What? Not a politician.
Time? Go on, just finish.
Oh, I want to be an architect. I want to be a marketing person. I want to be a zoologist and a horticulturalist. I would like actually 4 or 5 lives.
Nice. Can be arranged? Probably can.
What did you want to be when you were young?
Oh, I don't know. Well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Yes. Maybe you've already done it.
Yeah, I've done it now. I'm giving back to the community.
Very good. Thank you all. Fantastic. All right. Hey, let's hit this climate change thing. This has been called the climate change election by a few of the candidates that came in before you. Do you think it is? Finn, do you want to start?
I don't know. Is it the climate? I don't think this is an election that's a referendum on climate change at all, really. It's kind of a referendum on whether the city does serious action on climate change, though. So I think the climate change part is already settled. It's just more like, can we convince people who don't want to change their lifestyles to actually do something to support the next generation?
So how do you see it? You've been an activist, right? Generation Zero and so on?
Biggest problems.
Where do you think Dunedin is at?
15 years behind schedule.
On what?
Everything. Like urban renewal, so there's no public infrastructure to support alternative options to driving. So cars are the main way we get around Dunedin. That's not cool. That's not helpful if you can't access a car or realise that cars are really expensive and you'd rather get around for free. You look around and say, hang on a minute, everything here is built for the car or to service the car, and that's really short-sighted, and it's going to mean that Dunedin's going to really struggle with growth for the next 10, 15 years as we realise there's no more space to put car
And
parks.
we are seeing that now, aren't we? Because
Yeah.
we're getting complaints about the roads, we're getting complaints about parking.
Yeah, I look at it, and every candidate I say there's the parking problems in it, and I've said I've submitted on almost every single urban design project in the last 4 years, and almost every single time car parking has stayed the same. So there's been no mass exodus of car parks in Dunedin. Politicians just want to give it out as easy votes because they'll give more parking.
Is that a climate change issue really, or is that actually a growth issue?
It is definitely a climate change issue because cars are not going to be a solution for the future. Let's say we have electric vehicles and they're going to be a smart answer. If we did a 1-to-1 conversion of our petrol and diesel fleets to electric vehicles, we might as well let farmers do nothing on climate change because the cost of the CO2 cost of converting those cars and making those electric vehicles will completely blow our carbon budgets.
Just that.
Yeah.
So the life cycle of the whole car.
The life cycle of the whole car, if you did a 1-to-1 conversion, electrics would, completely blow our carbon budget.
All right. When you say we're 15 years behind, though, I mean, on what timetable?
On one where we could actually make short-term steps, be a bit lazy about it, not worry about it, be like, oh yeah, we're gonna do a little bit here, a little bit there. Well, our lifestyles might change a little bit, but 20 years down the track, we've built something awesome, and we don't have to worry about it too much. We're at the point now where it's like, if we don't do anything, my generation's actually going to get shafted.
And is that where the climate change emergency language comes from?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just
You feel that it's suddenly in our faces now.
It's like Dunedin City Council, New Zealand, the whole world has left the assignment to the night before, and you're not going to create any sort of fair, reasonable change in that time because no point rushing it.
Malcolm, you presumably aren't on the same wavelength as Finn, but how do you see it? Where do you think we are, and what does it mean to you?
Well, we hear that the science has settled on that this is a huge problem, but that isn't a scientific claim, and it's not true. There's hundreds of sceptical scientists. There's Richard Lindzen, Emeritus Professor of Atmospheric Sciences at MIT, assembled a petition of several hundred names. And just recently, the IPCC was formed in 1988 by two bodies, the United Nations Environment Programme and the World Meteorological Organisation. And just this week, the Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organisation Peteri Talas has said to Finnish news media that the alarmist narrative on climate change has gone off the rails, and he's criticised the news media for provoking unjustified anxiety. I mean, you have to remember that there's CO2 has been higher for most of the time that mammals have existed on Earth since most of the time since the Cambrian explosion 600 million years ago. I mean, we are currently in a interglacial period of an ice age, and for most of the last hundreds of millions of years, the Earth's been warmer than it is now. The poles have been ice-free in the past, and polar bears have survived.
What is new is the rate of CO2 that's been going up has been going up incredibly fast, no? By historical purpose.
Well, we have increased CO2 from 280 parts per million in pre-industrial to over 400 in just a couple of hundred years.
That's fast, right?
Yeah, that's fast, but there's no reason to think that that's leading to a unprecedented rate of increase in the sea level or temperatures. If you look at this sort of standard...
So is that the question for you, whether there's a direct relationship with the climate changing?
Well, the relation between CO2 and temperature, like if you look at the ice core samples the last 800,000 years, there's a lag of a few hundred years between the temperature and the CO2 level. So the temperature goes up and then the CO2 goes up a few hundred years later. So some scientists think that's because the Earth's warming from some other factor like the sun.
So when you hear the people like the council declaring climate emergency, when you hear Finn talking, I mean, you've got young people saying, we need you to do something. I take what you're saying about science still being, up for debate, but do you do nothing in that situation, or do you still have to act on the basis that it could happen?
Well, if you act on what could happen, then we should also be preparing for an invasion by hostile extraterrestrials. Like that's what if it does happen? We better be ready.
Well, we could.
We probably should.
I mean, hope for the best and plan for the worst, right, Malcolm?
I think it's helpful to distinguish between what computer models are saying. We have the problem of sort of garbage in, garbage out, and computer models haven't even been able to predict the past and actual measurements. Like with sea level rise, we don't see the acceleration. We hear like Jim Flynn talking about 5 metres rise when it's only 3 millimetres a year.
But if you were mayor then, how would you respond to this? Would you do nothing?
Yeah, I'd do very little, and I don't see any evidence that we need to be making it a top priority. We should just keep an eye on what scientists are doing and focus on coastal erosion, which is a problem regardless of whether or not the climate's changing.
Yeah. Rachel, you're in the middle. Where do you sit? Do you sit in the middle?
I see all sorts of reasons why we should change. I mean, honestly, we mowed our lawns in winter this year, so things are warming up. And so I see transport as being not just a climate change issue, but a growth issue. And so I think when we work together, like the university, the Polytech, the hospital, we need to be talking to our people and saying, how do you get to work? If you could get to work another way than in a car, what are the obstacles to that? And how can we help get the next step? So that might be that the Polytech, the university, the hospital look at car shares, for example. It might be that they have an electric bike fleet. I still believe some people do need to get to work in the car. I know of working mums who have to finish, say, at 3 o'clock on the shift, run to their car and then drive to the school. So there is still a need for cars. And in 2017, I wrote an article about that to the paper about the whole idea of park and ride. But these park and rides would be a transport hub as well. I have an electric bike, and many people have bikes. They're worth something like $5,000, and they need to have a place where to actually put them safely. There needs my son, he lives in London. If he wants a car, he just books a car. So maybe in that transport hub you have 20 bookable cars. Right. So there's lots
So you want more creativity around transport and more options.
Totally more options. And, you know, the government presently is looking at people on community services card having cheaper fares. So I think if we work together, maybe the University Polytechnic and Hospital can say, hey, let's all put a part subsidy in, and we've got to know what those barriers are for people, because we're on a journey together. We've got to help each other do this. Right. I'm not going to point at someone and say you can't go.
But just to be clear, where do you stand on the climate emergency stuff? Because that's obviously been something that the council wrestled with, and you were around the table, right?
Yes, and I agreed with the climate emergency in the sense that we need to act. So we've got, at the moment, we're reviewing our waste streams. We've got a huge opportunity for looking at our waste stream and recovering carbon dioxide from the new rubbish dump. We've got to look at everything, and it's in all our streams of work. How do we reduce our carbon? But it's also about having a more sustainable world. If I walk a lot of the time, I get fitter, I get healthier, and it's more sustainable for me. If I bike, so sometimes I bike, sometimes I walk, and sometimes I take the car, depending on the situation. And we can all start moving in that direction. And we're on this journey together. I look at the plastic situation, the plastic bag thing, and like 10 years ago, we wouldn't have thought everybody wouldn't be taking plastic bags home from the supermarket. People can change, but it's about telling the story in a positive light. When I broke my leg, I used to take the bus. I'd take the bus to work and then walk home for my fitness and well-being. Otherwise, my leg wouldn't have got better. So you can look at it in other contexts as well. And, you know, our world's resources are limited. If you reduce first, don't buy as much, reuse and recycle, then we're not actually using up all our world's resources as well. And there's so many positives in this, and there's so many ways to tell the story that we should be changing to a more sustainable lifestyle.
Right. Regardless. It's 5:27 and you're rattling the chains on OAR FM. And with me are three mayoral hopefuls, Rachel Elder, Finn Campbell and Malcolm Moncrief Spittle. Team, can I direct you to a different issue? Rates. I guess I'm wondering where you stand on rates. We've had people in before you in the last few episodes all over the place on this. Some people think we should get more money, more rates should go up because there's a lot to do. Some people think it's fine as it is, and some people want to drastically cut them. So I'm interested in you've got a climate emergency, Finn. Where do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, rates are always an interesting one. I think, obviously, the best service... Rates are being used to service the debt that we're currently taking on as a council. But the general sense is that, you know, some candidates are really saying rates are going to go down. But I think they're bound by a philosophical position of which council should bear no debt ever. There should be no social spending, and, you know, people will live freely happy lives without any government interference. So it's like, no, I completely disagree with that. We're going to actually have to borrow to invest in social capital. I don't plan on raising rates. I don't plan on doing a big spend. But I would like to see things like the waterfront redesign. I think that needs to go. That's an absolute waste of time. That's a vanity project.
That's interesting. The footbridge.
Yeah, I mean footbridge into the water basin. It's a substantial amount of money that was put into
20 million.
Yeah. I think it was the footbridge was 20 million, and then the provincial growth fund application associated with it was also about 100
million.
Yeah, $100 million. I'm like,
that's a lot of money.
That's money that really should be spent on infrastructure. And people then lumped the George Street redesign into that, and I think they're quite.
So would you want the waterfront to go ahead, or do you want to stop it, or do you want just private money to go into that?
I would not support the waterfront at all. No. I think it's a waste of money. I think when South Dunedin's flooding and we're getting sewage coming up when there's enough water going through, I'm like, it's a real no-brainer that, you know, if we are going to be looking to use our rates money, it really needs to go in critical infrastructure.
Rachel, where do you stand on the waterfront?
I like the waterfront as an idea, and the concept that Ian Taylor and Van Brandenburg put in front of us was a vision. And I think, in a sense, it was a vision only for me. It's an aspirational vision. I don't think we're going to get 100 million. And so...
Then what happens?
Yes, exactly. And so what we can do, Wellington did it over 20 years, and most of it was just setting up the land so that private investors do stuff, and that's what I think we should be doing. But when you look at the Portobello right round to Port Chalmers connection with the shared path and cycleway, I think it'll be an amazing place to hang out, have a coffee.
But all these things cost money, and you work in South Dunedin, which is the
Yes.
poorest community in the city.
Yes.
Can they afford the rates now? Can they afford 5% up every year?
I think we have to manage the rates. We shouldn't be going above that. I think we've got the rates rebate scheme, so we should be advertising that.
But inflation's only 1%, 2% a year,
Yes.
and every year the rates go up more. Is that justifiable?
I think so, because in fact we need to create a livable city. And so I think we have to look at everything we do though. And for example, if we don't get the 100 million for the waterfront, then I think we have to kind of say, well, is it justifiable to spend 20 million on the bridge? Should we relook at that? If I think we need to be planning for South Dunedin, if that needs more, we're going to have to relook at our budget and go, well, where in our budget are we going to get that money? Because in fact, South Dunedin infrastructure and planning needs to be
And it depends what the vision is
budgeted.
there, doesn't it? Because obviously if it's a question of retreating, that'll be an enormous cost, you know what I mean? If it's a question of just letting the water come in certain places, maybe that'll be less expensive. We don't even know what we're dealing with yet, do we?
No, and I think the first port of call is actually GNS and NIWA and all them doing the science at the moment. And so in a year's time, they will have a map of where the salt water goes, where the fresh water goes, and where it comes from. And I don't think we shouldn't make any decisions until we have the good information. Someone said that if you can define a problem, you can answer it. And I think we've got to define what and bore down, literally, to find out what the problem is. Because I could say, oh, I want this or I want that. But until we know what the problem is, we won't know what the solution is. It may be that we need to divide South Dunedin in half and put a big pipe out to sea for the stormwater for half of South Dunedin. We don't know that now. So I think I'm really backing this science and data.
Yeah, interesting. Malcolm, rates, how do you see it?
It's a major part of my platform is I do think the rate increases should be lower when inflation's only 2%, and also the fee increases in debt. It's no use just keeping the rates low if you start charging more for fees, like the parking meters that have gone up from $2 to $3 an hour. I went along to quite a few of the public hearings or public submissions to the long-term plan process, and quite a few of the members of the public didn't like the most expensive options, which ended up being voted for on two of the projects by all the councillors except Lee Van Divers. He did vote for the $20 million bridge, but Councillor Gary would say, well, have you heard of the rates rebate? And if you do the calculations, like after 7 years, like if you have a $2,000 rates bill, and that's going to go up over 50% in 10 years, after about 7 years, the amount that's gone up will completely be equivalent to that rates rebate.
Right, which is that you can get up to a half, I guess, is it? Yeah.
The rates rebate is $630 maximum. It goes up about $5 a year. So in 7 years, they'll be in the position of as if they were.
What would you do? What would you? No, I hear that. So you would, your principle would be that no more than inflation rises, would it be? Which would be what, 1.5%, 2% right now. Well,
it's a struggle to keep to that just because of what we have to spend on infrastructure. But I think it's kind of like rubbing salt in the whatever. If you're also going for the most expensive option on those three projects, which are for consideration in the long-term plan of the George Street, University area.
So what would you do? I mean, some councillors have said, or some candidates have said that they would stop all spending right now. Would you go radical, or are you just going to tweak?
Oh, I think, stop that $60 million George Street redevelopment.
Finn's shaking his head at you. Finn?
I mean, people think that's a vanity project, but it's a massive transformation for the area. Actually, getting cars out of there is actually going to make a big change to the way that people can move through that space. So if you sit on the curbside on George Street and you say, wow, this is the main shopping stretch in Dunedin, you go one row of footpath, a row of car parks, 2 lanes of traffic, another row of car parks, and then a small footpath on the end. 1/3 of a street area that's supposed to be a shopping strip is for foot traffic, and the other 2/3 are for single-use passenger vehicles.
Do you think that's going to fix it, though? I mean, it's a bit of a risky move, isn't it, kicking cars out of there? Making the one way and a little stream.
Like, when has a business done well from a drive-through on, was Hallensteins need a drive-through? Does Farmers, do they need a drive-through so people can shop there? People weren't going to shop there because you couldn't park your car up front. They were useless shoppers in the first place. I think businesses...
But it's a Dunedin mentality, isn't it? I mean, you kind of do. I mean, I found myself the other day driving to southern, the big box area in South Dunedin because I was not confident of finding a park. It is a Dunedin mentality that's going to take a wee while to shift there.
I know. It's, I think the bigger thing that's hit Dunedin shops is online shopping. That's been the massive market shift in how people consume. And so it's actually got to, if we reclaim that street area and make it a place where people want to actually be, so you can actually hang out there, that's going to make a big difference on people actually spending time in the space.
And also, I think there's opportunities to use technology to help people find parks, because there's quite often car parks in car park buildings. So
yes, I've heard they're underused even now.
Yes, they are. So
and they're cheaper than the street now.
Yes, they are. Yeah. So what you need is, I think they've got now the technology where they have this little sensor in each park.
Right. And it can tell you how many parks there are and all that kind of thing.
Exactly.
I think that stuff probably is really sensible. Tell me, we've had, on this election week, climate change is a big issue, housing's a big issue, parking's a big issue, transport keeps coming around. Is there anything else? I mean, I've heard nothing about the arts. Is the arts an issue this year? Is it not? It's gone quiet. Is there other things that we're not talking about we should be?
I mean, I would like to focus on arts and culture when I actually have a future to think about. Arts and culture is the nice secondary afterthought.
So it's a nice to have right now.
And it's great to have. And Dunedin does have a great arts culture. There's no denying that. I'm sorry, it's just not a priority for me because I've got other things that are a bit more existential.
And for me, I think also we've got one of the highest unemployment rates of any main centre. And I've seen so many people, I can still remember where I was sitting when I heard about the Cadbury's closing down, because there's a lot of people that are missing out, and work provides you socialisation, it provides you meaning and purpose, and it provides you routine, and it's a huge part of people's lives. So I've been working hard in the... I go to the Chamber of Commerce, Dunedin Host, and in the startup scene. So I've helped with, I did the Own the Factory campaign. I'm helping with Cafe Logic, and I'm helping with a startup space. And all of them I've been able to help get funding, because I see it really important to have a diverse economy. We're quite dependent on education and health, and yet we've got diverse people in Dunedin, and we need a wide spectrum of jobs. So really I passed a motion to send a letter to KiwiRail so that we encourage KiwiRail to use hillside workshops, right? Because we've got amazing engineering.
Everyone keeps talking about hillside workshops and how they could get some benefit, but we haven't seen anything yet, have we?
No, we have not.
Very slow.
It is very slow, but certainly being active in that space and like I say, put a motion that we should chase it. And I've been talking with Petri Dish, and we've got a number of startups that actually are making things, and we send our making part, putting that together, we subcontract it to Auckland and Christchurch. And what we're looking at is how can we actually have that capacity to do it here, because we all want to do it here and it would create more jobs. So there's some really interesting discussions in that space, in that engineering, production, manufacturing space, and I'm excited about it, and we should be seeking, funding through the Provincial Growth Fund or Callaghan Fund or whatever to enable that to happen, because 6% unemployment, one of the highest in the main centres, is a concern, because it's about not just money.
And youth unemployment's even higher, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and it's not okay. So yes, we can. Yes, which is a program run by Firebrand, is doing a good job.
Yeah, that's all they connect young people with businesses, right?
Yes. But I really love to see, and I've advocated for the Chamber of Commerce or someone to look at the hospital rebuild as a huge opportunity for young people and refugees and people who have been made unemployed from production and manufacturing.
And hopefully there'll be some citywide benefit from that.
Yes, but they could go and get some skills. We need to skill them up now, so we need someone to help them navigate to get to Polytech and do trades.
Just a few minutes left, so let's do one last thing. Can you maybe just all tell me one big thing, your biggest idea that you're coming to the election with? Who wants to start? Malcolm, have you got any big ideas you want to put on the table?
My two ideas are you're keeping the rates down and pushing back against the alarmism, which is taking over a lot of Dunedin Council at the moment.
That's certainly the talking point of the election. We've talked about that, absolutely. Finn, have you got a big idea?
One big idea? No, I don't have the one big thing, sorry. It's, I would say, making sure that when we do grow, we've got to make sure our transportation and our housing enable each other at the same time. Just saying, putting in more cycleways.
What would you do with transport? That was the first thing you would do.
Yeah, I would like to see more cycleways in appropriate locations. I think
been controversial though, cycleways.
I mean, you sneeze in politics and someone will call you out for it. I don't care. I think it's more appropriate that we get away from just putting cycleways down everywhere. I think they've got to connect up main corridors so that people who live closer to the suburbs can actually get somewhere without needing a car. I mean, cycleways should be built so that your kids could bike on them. That's how they should be designed. So if you're comfortable your kids going on a cycleway, you've done it right. You got to ignore the middle-aged men in lycra.
Fair enough. That's quite a big idea from where we are. Rachel, big idea?
Well, I did.
You had one at the beginning, didn't you?
I did allude to that.
Go on.
We've just done an audit of tracks in Dunedin. We've got about 400 small to medium or large tracks, and our recreation policy has a policy of linking those tracks. If we could link those tracks, we could have a track right round the back of the peninsula, through the town belt, right round to the other end, and then link to the Eco Sanctuary and Waititi and beyond. And this would make people look for cities because they're livable, they're lifestyle cities. So I want to see an active, exciting, outdoor lifestyle city, because we've got amazing opportunity there.
So this be a compliment to the Harbourside cycleway, is it? This is the town belt walkway, is it?
Yes. So I think linking them all would make it more dynamic. Plus, I know walkers and bikers are more likely to walk and bike to work as well, because you want to keep fit. The other thing is, I think we really do need to continue to have a housing working party, because again, a warm, dry, affordable home, people think it's a human right, but we've got people in motels in the Leviathan, for example, and it's not a very nice
Still
space
got some big
to be
challenges,
in.
haven't we? Yeah.
So we really need to look at that.
Thank you.
Agreed.
All right. We're out of time, but big thanks to you all.
Sorry, Malcolm.
No, that's good. Malcolm Moncrief Spittle, Finn Campbell, and just heard then Rachel Elder. Thank you, and all the best to you all. Just 2 weeks left till voting starts, so it's the crawl to the finish, eh?
Yeah.
Right, you can hear this program again, or you can share it with your friends by going to our website, oar.org.nz. And you can get a full video too of the whole thing on Facebook and YouTube. Next Monday at 5, we'll be meeting our last 3 candidates. They'll be Scout Barbara Evans, Jules Radich, and Mandy Mayhem Bullock. Thanks to my wonderful production team, Leslie, Jeff, Jeff and Domi, and thanks to you for listening. Stay strong. Kia kaha.
Kia kaha.